Hello and welcome to a new episode of NPC, Next Portable Console, the show about the games we take with us, and at some point, maybe eventually, the unofficial Nintendo Switch 2 podcast. I'm Federico Vitici, and I'm joined as always by the one and only Brandon Bigley. Hello, Brandon.
Oh, hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Whatever time it may be when you're listening, but definitely morning for me.
Yes, as we can see from the coffee. And also, hello, John Voorhees. Hey, John.
Hello. I've got a little coffee going here, too. And I have a little buddy with me over here, which is my space heater. It's been really cold, really cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a packed episode today.
We do.
Yeah.
We obviously want to start just by having some quick follow-up about the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, nothing has changed in terms of Nintendo hasn't said anything else. And now that it's been a few days, in hindsight, it kind of feels like Nintendo was just, fine, have a trailer about this thing, and then we'll see you again. We'll see you again in 3 months, okay?
Yeah. Begrudgingly releasing information just to stop the leaks.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they didn't stop. There are still leaks happening
Yes.
about various things
Yes.
here and there. So, you can't plug a hole in the dam.
Yeah, I think the only thing that, the one thing since we spoke that I saw was a frame-by-frame analysis of the Joy-Con and the little button on the back that in the video depresses very slightly before it detaches, which I don't think is a shocking or unexpected thing, but that was broken down by, I think, Polygon and maybe a couple other places.
It seems a lot like the DualSense controller, where like there's the kind of half press in some games, and then you have to like press a little bit harder to fully press down on it.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. The lack of information is bad enough when people are analyzing a trailer frame by frame. That's all we got. But just as a quick vibe check, how are we feeling? Still excited? Still, I don't know. Brandon, how do you feel about it?
I've had two major things, I think, since this. Number one is that I'm playing Chrono Cross for a bonus episode for Into the Aether right now on my Nintendo Switch. And every single time I play, just about every 5 to 6 minutes, the game is like, just kidding, you don't have controllers anymore, because my Joy-Cons keep slipping out of the rails. So the idea of it being magnetically attachable is suddenly very exciting to me in a way that I was like, I don't really need this. And now I'm like, I really need this. This is the most important thing to me. That's one thing. Number two, I just had a thought the other day that I'm still mulling over, which is just how weird accessories are going to get for this thing. I think specifically when thinking about mouse mode with the Joy-Cons, because, the idea in theory of being able to sit down and like use a mouse to play a thing like Civilization or a first-person shooter or Splatoon or Mario Paint or any of the things that people want, that's very exciting. But if you're sitting in front of your television and like you have a coffee table in front of you or something, reaching down to use the mouse seems like that's going to be weird. And I think we're going to see, if, correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine there's a million of these things for, like, I would imagine, like PCs and stuff already. But some kind of way of being able to use mouse mode, like while sitting on the couch, I think it's going to look a lot like your gaming pillow.
Hear me out. Mouse pillow, okay?
We've been through this with the Vision Pro and trying to use keyboards and trackpads with the Vision Pro. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of people with lap desk type setups on their couch. And maybe we'll get the special Nintendo branded one with a little Mario Kart wheel that can attach to it or something. Who knows?
Yeah, right? Like, I just feel like accessories are going to, like, they were already pretty weird with the Switch, as is. But now that you're throwing mouse mode and how uncomfortable that'll be in a lot of situations that aren't like, I'm sitting on a high top, like in a bar. I feel like that's maybe the only like conducive situation for like Switch 2 with the kickstand out using mouse mode.
Maybe
you need something else.
I don't know. Maybe it's like a Wiimote to a degree. Maybe maybe you can just like shake it in the air and point at stuff like without running along something. Who knows? I'm still really excited about this too. For me, my expectations for the hardware are fairly low. I mean, I know a lot of people are hoping for OLED. I think OLED is probably unlikely because I think it's typical Nintendo. They're going to want to sell us the Switch 2 and 3 times over again for those of us who are true Nintendo Switch sickos. And that, I mean, that's not great. On the other hand, as long as it's got updated hardware internals and a good, big, bright screen, I'm happy. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the games. And better hardware means better games, and we're it's time for a new generation of games, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what I'm really looking forward to. Like, let me see what Metroid looks like on this thing, because I mean, it seems pretty much a given that Metroid Prime 4 is gonna be a cross-generation title, especially because of mouse mode. So let me see what that looks like. Let me see what the new Mario looks like. Like, I just want the games, and I'm really keen to see like if this Switch 2 can really become a viable Steam Deck competitor, in the sense of like, it's more powerful. It's got a pointer. Now it should be easier for PC games that run pretty well on a Steam Deck to also become available on a Nintendo Switch 2. So I'm really, really keen to see what my gaming setup is going to look like.
That feels like the positioning. That feels like what they're aiming for with mouse mode. And then I think the biggest thing, and shout out again to Polygon. I think Chris Grant over Polygon put together a really great piece that was like just breaking down the price of every Nintendo console that there's ever been. Kind of like guesstimating where the price is going to land. And I think he brought up a great point, which is like the price in particular, I think will really prove if they're positioning themselves against the Steam Deck or not. Mm-hmm. Like if they go for $350, that means they're trying to compete directly with the Steam Deck. And if they're at $400, it's like, this is just a Nintendo thing and they're just being weird,
Yeah.
How much are they considering the competition?
Yeah. We all registered for the Nintendo Switch 2 experience. Sure I had a fantastic time doing so. On the
it was a total ordeal.
On the Italian Nintendo website, I just went in, actually 20 minutes after the lottery opened.
Oh my God.
Went in, logged in. I realized I could add up to 5 guests. So I actually took my time to log back into my Nintendo account, invite Sylvia as a family member.
That's nice.
Just to make sure that, we could go together if you wanted to. And then I went back and I picked my slot, and I was done in like 10 minutes. It seems like it was not the same for you guys.
It was a little different for New York. I think Brendan and I were struggling for like 40 minutes with the website with, failures to load, errors on the web page, getting all the way through to the checkout point where you click the button to reserve the slot, only to have it time out and have the button reload, and you had to click it again and then eventually fail again. I don't know. That happened to me over and over and over again. And I started right when it opened up, and I think it was about 40 minutes by the time I finally got it all got through the whole thing.
I love that the resolution to this also was you realizing that of one of the many times that it failed, it actually succeeded but didn't tell you.
Yes.
So then I checked, and it turns out the same was true for me. And the question is like, was that the first time that it failed, that it succeeded actually? And I spent the next, 44 minutes just thinking that I wasn't getting into this thing.
Yeah, no, I was trying all different time slots on like the Saturday afternoon in New York, and who knows which one of the times I clicked on that particular slot I got it, but I got some time mid-afternoon on Saturday. So
I felt my like person who's been to Disney World too many times senses kicking in about like which fast pass do I get when I was looking at the big list of all of the different sessions that they had, because they had 3 sessions a day for 3 days or 4 days or something like that. And I was like, okay, which one of these is the one that people won't go for? I wanted Friday definitely, but like which is the one that people won't go for? I wanted a Friday session B. We'll see.
You could go like late in the afternoon on Sunday, I suppose, maybe. I don't know. It took a long time. It took me back to the old days of trying to buy an iPhone when it first came out, and clicking and clicking and clicking and hoping you'd get through. It was actually probably worse than that in the end. But we're all signed up, so hopefully. I don't know. Do you guys remember when did they announce the tickets?
They close on the 26th, I want to say.
Okay.
So still a few days to register if you want to. We're recording this on the 23rd. So, cool. So we'll see how it goes. And
fingers crossed. Hopefully one of us gets in. And
hopefully the 3 of us, just, one of us would be nice.
John, if you get into New York and I don't, that's going to be wild.
I know, you're going to be very upset.
I'm just going to I'll be just like waiting outside the center where they're holding it.
I have a feeling. Hold on. Well, I suppose you gotta register as a family member beforehand, so it's not like you can retroactively claim Brandon is part of my family.
Didn't even think about that.
I didn't either. We should have done that for each other. Adopt a Brendan.
Yeah. we have a bunch of topics to get to today. The first one is it's in our notes. This mini iPhone controller topic that I see some interesting entries, and I also see some first impressions from John about a very peculiar type of controller. So what do we have here? The MCon. Let's talk about the MCon. You guys saw this at CES.
We did. We saw it behind glass. And
okay.
But it looked like a real product. I mean, it was very polished. I assumed it would look a lot more like the prototype that was in the video that Russ Crandall did for Retro Game Core.
For those who don't know, the MCon is a slide out, sort of almost like PSP Go style controller that...
you mean like this?
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
Exactly like that. It's been in prototype phase for a while now. The creator of the MCon eventually teamed up with the folks at OSnap, which is an accessory maker. They make a bunch of iPhone cases. It's almost they make a bunch of like pop socket style grips, which I think is a great fit given that magnets are one of the most fundamental pieces of this controller. I don't know if you guys have seen a couple of days ago there was a Q&A video that they did for the MCon, and they showed like a bunch of like different aspects of the controller, like and it seems like a lot of thought went into finalizing this product, especially for how the slide out part of the controller, it doesn't, like, they had to study carefully how gravity and the force of the sliding out mechanism, like how does it affect the iPhone or any other phone with a magnet staying attached to the piece of plastic. And it's very fascinating video. I'm really excited about this controller. What was you guys have seen it behind glass? It seems to me like it was the attraction of CES in terms of like iPhone controllers coming out in the future.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, of everything that I saw in terms of iPhone accessories, that was the one that was the most interesting on the gaming front. And maybe John, you feel differently, but I can't really think of anything else even outside of the gaming front that I was interested in on this level. I think in particular, to John's point, like seeing it in person and seeing how high quality those production models looked were like, I mean, that in particular was the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge. I was excited about it, and I've been excited about it, and I've been writing about it like since it was first announced, whenever that was. But seeing it in person in particular, and the thing that I compared it the most to, I think, in terms of build quality and like look and design, even though it's kind of modeled after the PSP Go or the Sony Xperia, whatever, it looks and feels a lot like a Nintendo DSi in a lot of ways. Like,
that's a good point.
The kind of matte plastic of it, and even the like charging icons and stuff are really similar. It looks amazing. And one thing that I don't think mentioned in that developer update, and I haven't seen mentioned anywhere else, but they did tell us at CES, so I don't mind relaying it, is like you can attach a USB-C cord to it, and you could use it wired if you want to. Like it is Bluetooth technically, but if you want to use a wired, like latency-free connection, you could also just plug it in.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. I didn't really expect that, but I mean, a short cable might be a good way to go. I mean, obviously there'd be less latency than with a Bluetooth connection. They had packaging printed up. They had, as well as, the very, very finished looking product, and seeing the grips that slide out, that kind of rotate out from the bottom. I think that will prove to be a really important feature of this, because I think otherwise with the phone flipping up, it would be a little bit too top heavy, and this will balance it a lot better. What was really funny to me when Brendan and I talked to one of their representatives was it was pretty clear that everybody was coming to their booth to see the MCon, and nobody cared about their pop socket knockoffs at all. It was very funny. They were like, oh yeah, here it is. You can take a look at it. We talked to them a little bit about the engineering behind it, which was fun.
Yeah. I will say, I think I'm just generally very excited to have this and try and see if it actually fulfills the dream of, like, if I have this in my pocket at all times, is my iPhone the number one emulation device that I have going forward? Because my plan for this year is to kind of just like mainline a device for like a week or two at a time over and over and over again and kind of land on like the one in some ways, or at least learn more about what I want to be the one. So like a device we're talking about later today is one that I've been trying for about a week and a half at this point. Right now, I have the PSP Go that I've been using like mainly as my daily driver for a little bit. And I'm wondering if eventually, because we've talked about this in the past, you know, and we said that the iPhone was our emulation device of the year last year. I think in a lot of ways, pairing it with something like this will actually push it over the line and just make it more convenient. Yeah, I'm stoked about this thing. Also, apparently, I don't know when they said it's gonna launch, but I've been hearing a lot of rumblings that Sony has a patent on the ability to use a slide out screen to hide controllers that expires sometime in August. So I'm wondering if they're just waiting for that patent to expire before.
Yeah, I think the Kickstarter does say August, so that would definitely track with that.
Because it looks like ready. You know, it looks like ready to go. So they might just be like sitting on it. And it's at what? Almost $1.5 million at the time of this recording.
Yeah, they've announced they're going to do the transparent frosted version too, which I think looks really cool. They talked to us a little bit how they're thinking about how they're going to color the PCB inside so it looks good under the frosted
like Kickstarter
exterior.
green.
Yeah.
The folks at 8BitDo announced a bracket for the 8BitDo Micro. John, I think you got one of these.
I did.
Did you?
It hasn't come yet. It should be here. It's in New York right now. It landed from China in New York yesterday, I think. It should be here early next week. I already had the Micro, so I thought, why not? It's $10.
The Micro is the like really small.
Yeah, I actually have it right here on my desk. See how small that is?
Oh, that's so cute, though.
It's basically the exact width of an iPhone.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So it's almost perfect for this. It's just a slightly narrower than an iPhone. And so this bracket just wraps around the bottom of your phone and allows you to, play games and using Delta or whatever.
So it's basically like almost like a cradle for the iPhone and the 8BitDo Micro together.
Yeah, I think so. There's not a lot online about how exactly it works, so I'm kind of interested to see what the fit is like and how it exactly operates. But I think it's pretty simple, just a plastic bracket, which I'm looking forward to. I think the advantage of that is that it looks like it's going to be relatively easy to take off because if you're covering up part of your screen, that becomes a problem. And which is something we're going to talk about with one of these other solutions.
Which is actually a very similar idea. This is something that you saw at CES. Both Brandon and John have written about it. It's the what's it called? The GamSir. It's a concept. I don't think it's got a name.
Yeah, no name for it yet.
No name.
Yeah.
So can you describe what it is? Because it kind of looks similar to me.
I would love to. Yeah. This I think outside of the MCon was the most exciting thing I saw at CES. We went to GamSir's booth and they were showing us a bunch of upcoming controllers and refreshes of old controllers and stuff. But they just had this prototype sitting on a table, and I was like, I need to know more about this. So we talked to a couple people at GamSir about what it was. It's basically a U-shaped controller that your phone fits into.
Okay.
And on the
so it's
front
like
of it,
it's like a sandwich.
it's like a phone sandwich. And on the front of it is just, this is my Miyoo Mini Plus, is like just the buttons.
Okay.
So the D-pad and face buttons and start and select. And also I think there's like a function button and also a Bluetooth button.
Did they have shoulder buttons? I want to
yeah,
say
and then
yes.
From
on the
the
back,
pictures, it looks like they
Yes.
do. Yeah.
On the back of the U-shaped device are shoulder buttons. So basically, you just slide your phone in. There's like a spring kind of hinge that kind of like closes it and clamps it. And then you're holding your phone kind of like you would a Miyoo Mini Plus or a Trim UI brick or something like that. Honestly, I think the brick is maybe the better example because one of the things I really like about the brick, and I think a thing that we all share
Shout
about
out to the brick.
shout out to the brick, is when you're holding it, I think because of this design, because of this kind of like steep angle where the shoulder buttons exist, it makes for a really kind of natural grip. And I think pushing the device down into your palms via the shoulder buttons feels really nice. And the same is actually true of this GamSir thing. Like immediately when I put my phone in it and had it in my hands, I was like, oh, this feels exactly like holding the Trim UI brick. It's just using my phone. Some nice things. So it's Bluetooth, which, that's going to be a plus for some people, a minus for some people. But it's also a battery bank, which is wild. So the back part of it,
all right,
underneath the shoulder buttons contains a battery, and you can just plug that into your phone and also use it as an external battery to recharge your phone if you want. So multi-purpose controller. I'm stoked about this thing. They said it's going to launch in some kind of crowdfunding campaign relatively soon, and then launch for real sometime in the spring. They were saying like April or May, somewhere in that vicinity.
Yeah.
But I think this rocks. Like, specifically being, about half the size of the Miyoo Mini Plus, and then also being able to use my phone. I think there are going to be, some drawbacks, obviously, right? So if you want to play anything that uses an analog stick, that's not going to happen just straight up. You're pretty much relegated to only things that need 2 face buttons and a D-pad. But I mean, even if they were able to fit like more buttons on it, like if they could just throw an X and Y on there, I think that would go a really long way.
Yeah. No, I was really excited about seeing this too. It was really unexpected, and what we saw was very much a prototype. It was a little fragile. They basically told us, please don't break it when Brendan picked it up, because
let me correct myself. It does have X and Y, so we're good.
Oh, it does. Okay. Yeah. So it was. Yeah, that was an exciting thing to see. I think that what's similar to the 8-bit dough thing is that it slides on and off easily, which I think is going to be important, because the other device that we saw and that I've been playing with is the Game Baby.
Oh, the Game Baby.
The Game Baby from Bitmo Lab, which, they'd started taking pre-orders quite a long time ago, many months ago. And
we've been talking about this thing forever.
Yeah, I have a pre-production unit, and I have a production one coming soon, I think. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, this is an iPhone case where you can slide off the bottom half, flip it around to the front of your phone.
Okay.
All right. And then it will use capacitive buttons to interact with one of the Delta skins. And there are a few friction points here. One is getting the case apart isn't easy. It has these little clips on the short rails along the side of your phone that are very tight and hard to get off, and they look very breakable. This, again, is a prototype pre-production unit. I don't know. They may be doing something different with the way it connects, but the reason those are there is because those buttons need to be lined up just right in order for the capacitive stuff to work. The other thing is that once you put this bottom half of the case on the front of your phone, you no longer have access to touching half of your phone, which is problematic, because yes, what you can do is you can open up Delta, get into your game, then put on the bottom half on the front of your phone and play your game. But if you do anything to exit out of that game, even a random swipe as you're trying to fit this case on the front of your phone, now you've got to kind of go back and start all over again, take it apart, get back into your game. That's very fiddly. And we saw actually the guy who was demoing it to us had that exact thing happen to him as he was demoing it to us. The other thing I will say is that these buttons are very mushy and not super accurate. I've seen, especially with the D-pad, I've had, missed presses and things like that playing with it. And it requires, on top of all of that, a Game Baby skin. So they have skins for NES, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance, I think. And so you have to download their skin, use their skin. You can't use any of the custom skins like the ones we did for Club Mac Stories. Those were for the DS. But, any of those skins that like Sean Fletcher makes or anybody makes, you can't use any of those. You have to use theirs, because not only do you have to have the buttons in the exact right place, the standard buttons, but they also have buttons there for the shoulder buttons and for the menu. It's all crammed into this bottom half of the phone. So it's, I don't know. It's not ideal. I mean, I'm going to hold out some judgment on it because it's pre-production unit, but I think it's a little more fiddly than it needs to be. And I think these other solutions that can be easily taken off the phone will be a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like it's instead of providing a solution, it's adding more problems to
it's a lot of steps to get it kind of all set up, and then it's even once you get it all set up and correctly set up, the button experience is not particularly good, and you're stuck with a very generic skin too that's not particularly good looking.
I gotta say, if we are going for this sort of like style where basically the bottom half of the phone is, there's something on top of it, I think I'm much more fascinated by the GamSir approach, where it's like it's almost like a thinner Game Boy SP, which is actually like a little toaster, and I put my phone
Yes.
in the middle of it, and I think when I'm done, I can just slide it out and put the GamSir in my pocket. Like I think that's potentially a winning approach for me. I think
They should call it the Game Toaster, definitely.
it's the Game Toaster. Game Baby, the Game Toaster.
Yeah.
Hey, GamSir, if you want to hire me as a marketing person.
Hey, I'll put you in touch with them, Federico.
No, thank you. No, thank you. We have so thank you both for the first impressions from
Thank
CES.
you, Federico, for asking about first impressions.
We have more first impressions from the man of the hour, in this case, John. I am so incredibly, in a good way, jealous of you because you have the Odin2 Portal.
I do. We are recording on a Thursday. This just came 2 afternoons ago. So I have had this for like 36 hours, and it is absolutely amazing. I'm going to hold it up for the audience on the video to take a look at.
Ooh.
I got the black one. Okay.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time. It's kind of blowing out the screen there. I got to get the brightness down a little bit maybe for the camera, but
there it is. Yeah,
there it is.
Nice.
So,
okay,
this thing, guys, is unbelievable. I have not used it a lot, but the screen is everything I hoped it would be. 7 inches OLED, 120 hertz refresh rate, 1080p. The black, I think,
all the good stuff. All the
good stuff.
Yeah,
I think the black was a good move because the bezels are very small. But when you're playing something like, I don't know, Game Boy Advance, which isn't going to fill the entire screen anyway, the black on the sides just disappears into the body of the unit. So it looks absolutely fantastic. I have not played a lot of games. As you can see, I have Emulation Station installed. I was setting up my emulators last night, setting this up, and I went through and tested a handful of games for each system, and they all look really, really, really good. And with the Snapdragon, it's Gen 2. It's plenty powerful enough to emulate an awful lot of stuff. I haven't tried any Switch or Wii U or anything like that, but I've tried up to the Wii. And I also downloaded a bunch of Android games, both from the Netflix library as well as some other ones that I already owned, and GeForce Now. And what really blew my socks off was playing 5 minutes of Indiana Jones on this thing because
are you playing on the Ultimate tier on GeForce Now?
Yeah, because it's unbelievable the quality of the stream you get, and it's really responsive. It looks fantastic on this screen. Like I said, I have not played a game for more than 10 minutes at this point because I haven't had time. I've been mostly setting it up, but it's really the screen that knocked me out. The shallow grips are a bit of a disappointment. They are a little more shallow than I would like. I think that there'll be a lot of accessories, additional grips to put on this that'll make it a little more comfortable.
You didn't order the one from Ayn?
I didn't.
TPU grip?
I didn't. I thought that they were just going to send those to you, but apparently not, because it wasn't in my box.
For free?
Yeah, it's an extra.
Well,
they did include the thumbsticks for free for everybody who backed on Indiegogo, which was nice.
Oh, yeah, they did. That was in the box. I think that you'll want to go with the more grippy, textured thumbsticks. I haven't put them on yet, but I was playing some stuff this morning. I thought, oh, yeah, I think I want the more grippy ones. There's also a second set of buttons, A, B, X, and Y buttons, and I don't know why those were in there. I don't think they're any different than the ones that are already on there.
Oh, really?
Can you tell me how
sit higher though?
How clicky are they?
That is where I was going to get to, Federico. I'm very sad to report for you that last night, after I finished setting up my emulators, it was getting late. Jennifer was already in bed asleep. I thought I'm just gonna play for like 15-20 minutes with with my headphones on, and within 5 minutes of playing a game.
No.
She rolled over and said, "That thing's really loud."
No. No. No.
She was already
nightmare.
asleep. I woke her up.
That is
and she's like,
heartbreaking.
yes.
No.
And she said, "Please stop."
No.
Here-
Whoa.
Oh,
Yeah, that is pretty
what?
loud.
It's really loud.
Ayn, what have you
That's-
done?
that's
Why? See,
That's like
that's what?
SP.
Can you do it again, John?
Yeah.
No way. There's that. Those are the A, B, X, and Y buttons.
Yeah. This is the D-pad.
Oh no! Wow.
Triggers quiet.
What?
Triggers are quiet.
Okay. Why though?
Mostly.
Like the Odin2 is not like that.
Yeah, the Odin 2
No.
is not like that, or the Mini even. Yeah, that's
what
very
have
interesting.
what have they done? Why?
I don't know. It's just like plastic on plastic sounding.
Yeah.
Jesus, no. That's
It's
Yeah,
very
I
loud.
wonder if that will go away the more you use it. Like, I wonder if
Maybe
it'll
Or
get broken in or
somebody
anything.
will come up with like
some kind of mod.
some
Yeah.
kind of mod, some kind of membrane that you can put on
And
the
maybe
buttons.
that's what those other buttons are for that are in the bag. I haven't had a chance to even look at them and compare them side by side with the ones. I mean, they look on the surface like the ones that were pre-installed, but they may have a different backing or something. I don't know.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the downside is the clickiness.
That's the big one. The biggest downside is the clackiness. The medium downside is the shallow grips, but the screen is by far the best screen I've ever used on a device, a handheld device. It gets really
That's high
bright
praise.
too.
Yeah,
It
that's
gets up to-
exciting.
it gets up to 800 nits, according to their website. I mean, it gets really, really bright, as you could tell when I was blowing out the screen, holding this up. I mean, it really, really gets super bright. This is like, I don't know, a third brightness right there.
Yeah,
So
that's wild.
yeah, that was like
That's really wild. That's also interesting. I mean, it's not an OLED screen, but that's kind of my issue with the Odin Mini as well, or the Odin 2 Mini, is that screen gets so bright, like that mini LED screen, that
Yeah.
I usually have it like almost as low as possible, pretty much in all cases while I'm playing.
it can get it does get very dim, which is good. See, that's
Right. Oh yeah, that's awesome.
that's the lowest setting. So it can get very dim, but it also gets very bright. But that clackiness, boy, I'm telling you.
I actually do
That's-
find that dimness is more important to me at this point than brightness is in some ways.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still looking forward to it, and I'm sure somebody will come out with a mod. Like that is way too loud. Somebody will, I'm sure.
Yeah, I
Federico
think that,
and I both got the white one, so we're gonna be waiting for a long time. It seems like to get ours.
Mine is live in China, I think.
Oh,
That-
really? Yours?
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten an update on mine.
did you get the Pro or the Max?
Well, no, it says the Max. Shipment arrived at facility and measured. So they measured my box in China. You know,
That's great.
There are so many steps when something
thanks
comes directly from
thanks
China.
for doing that. So we'll report back once we have all of our portals.
Yeah, I got the Pro. I got the Pro model, by the way. So it
Okay,
doesn't
yeah,
have
that
quite
was
as much
faster-
storage or RAM.
faster to
It's got
ship, yeah.
12 gigabytes of RAM, I think, and 512 storage.
I will say to anyone who is considering any of the Odin 2 family, I would really recommend not getting the base model and going with Pro.
I agree.
Just that little bit of extra cost and extra
Yes.
power goes a really, really, really long way when you're emulating stuff.
Yeah.
Having used both, it's kind of a night and day thing.
The Pro tier is the best balance, I think,
Yeah.
between
Yeah, I
price
think
and
it really
performance.
is.
Yeah, you want to get the Pro.
I will tell you guys, I think that this device for me, I'm definitely going to be emulating things on it a lot, but I'm going to use it a lot for streaming between GeForce Now and local streaming. I have not tried local streaming from my Xbox or PS5 yet, but I'm assuming it'll be just as good as, the old Odin. And a handful of Android games, because why not? It's just so well tuned for modern games that it would be a shame not to be either streaming or playing those Android games on here too.
Yeah, that's why I got it specifically, was for streaming. That's
Yeah.
really going to be
Same,
the main
same.
reason for
Yeah.
it. Like maybe I'll throw emulators on it, but I have so many other devices for that. I don't know if I need it,
Exactly.
You haven't played a Game Boy Advance game until you've played it on a 7-inch screen.
Why not? Why not?
Advance Wars 2. I opened that up and I
Everybody's
was like,
saying that.
wow, this is huge.
Add John to the choir of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brandon, you published a review, a video on wavelengths about the device I think the three amongst the three of us have been looking forward to the most. It's the Miyoo Flip. Now,
Miyoo Flip.
I would recommend people go read or watch or listen. I actually listened to your video review, and then I also watched it again because I wanted to see.
Wow, thank you.
Wow, he's a big fan. He's a big
Juice
fan.
in the analytics, baby.
You have those funny moments in your videos that I really like, especially when you say something, you turn the video black and white. That's one of the funny. Bits
I'm glad you like that bit.
I appreciate those bits. Yes. Anyway.
We could start doing that in this show. John, just make me black and white every time I take us on a tangent.
Yeah, here we go.
Just make Brandon
like
black
this
and white.
one?
Yeah, like this. Yeah, like this one.
The black and white tangent.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think that right now the Miyoo Flip is replacing the SP for you?
That's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to make a video about it, because it was going to be hard to articulate in writing in some ways, and I just needed to kind of like vent into a camera. The short answer for me is yes, and that's mainly because I already own it. Like, if I was a person who was interested in buying a Miyoo Flip, I think the answer would be no. Like, especially if you have an SP already, there's no reason to upgrade to the Miyoo Flip right now. But because I bought one for the purposes of this show and reviewing it on wavelengths, I think it's the better device for me right now, mainly because of all of the things that we've been talking about since the SP came out, which is like, I like the SP a lot, but it feels chunky and it feels dense, and when it's in my pocket, I always notice it's there, and that's just annoying. Like, if I'm being totally honest, like I just find that annoying. So my thought was always, if they can get the size down at all for the Miyoo Flip and bring it closer to the original Game Boy Advance SP, that'll probably feel a lot better to me. And the truth of the matter is that it does. It feels a lot more premium, I think, in terms of build quality. The big trade-off and the big, discussion point of that review, though, is like, the software is not good. Like, the stock software that comes with it is not good. The options that are out there right now have myriad pros and cons. And we're just kind of like sitting and waiting for a bunch of community developers to maybe make custom firmware for it that improves the device. And that's not a given. Like, it's exciting that those developers, like the ones behind Spruce and Onion OS and Moo OS, all have the Miyoo Flip and are like exploring that option. But it's not a given that they'll release it, right? Like, the Onion team had the A30 and they don't have Onion on the A30 because they didn't want to do it. And that's like their prerogative. It's totally cool. It's their free work that they're giving back to the community. That makes stuff like that possible. And the onus is not on Onion to make the A30 worth buying. The onus is on Miyoo to make the A30 worth buying. And similarly, it's the exact same story with the Flip, I think, at the end of the day. What comes out of the box on here is not capable of doing the things that I kind of want it to be doing. Specifically, the thing that I always talk about is like, I just want to be playing DS games with a single screen, always. I have a lot of Dragon Quest games to get through, and this thing is not very capable of playing DS at high speeds or in a way that feels like as good as the SP even. That said, it is just a more comfortable device to play and use, and I like the controls better. Ergonomically, I think it feels better for me. I think that'll, that your mileage may vary depending on who you are. But right now, I think this device feels amazing. It just needs some software improvements, and that's going to take a little while. So that's kind of where I land on it. I think if you don't own one, don't buy one yet, just straight up. I think it's probably not worth buying until there's better firmware. But if you're in the market for an SP-style device, maybe this one will be worth it in a couple months. How do you feel? I'm really curious about your feel, like, because we haven't talked about it at all. I kind of wanted to save it for the show. I've been really curious about your experience with it.
I instantly liked it better than the SP. And I think, and maybe this is just a me thing, and it actually surprised me. I found the stock software, even though it's got plenty of problems, I just found it more intuitive than the Ambernic stock software on the SP. Something about it, the way it was like, the way the different consoles were laid out, just I found it instantly easier to understand than the Ambernic. There was a moment when, like, for about 30 minutes after I got it, I felt like I was losing my mind because it wasn't charging.
Oh yeah. Yeah, right.
Brendan to the rescue.
And Brandon came to the rescue because he was like, "Are you plugging it into the right USB-C port? Because
Yeah.
it's got two USB-C ports." And
Here's the confusion. The
Yeah.
SP has one USB-C port on the top of it, next to the HDMI port, and the Miyoo Flip has the exact same
Yep.
setup, but it
Yep.
also has a USB-C port on the bottom, and the
Yes.
bottom one is the only one that charges it.
Right.
And I didn't
right.
know that because I
Yeah.
also I can never be bothered to look at the instruction manual when I get these things. I just open it up and I want to start playing.
More dangerous when you're dealing with these
Hey,
smaller.
you know,
You're gonna light it on fire.
You only live once. I mean, come on. What's a handheld gonna do? But
Ask all the SP owners.
I know. See, but then I put Miyoo on it, and
Yeah.
now I haven't spent enough time. Also, because I've been so fascinated by this other little guy, about the brick,
Yeah, the
that
brick
I also
is great.
that I also want to talk about. But I think if I ever make the decision, I think so. For now, it's coming down for me between the brick and the flip.
Yeah.
If I come down and say I am going with the flip device, I'm 100% going to go with the Miyoo Flip instead of the SP. And that's because the possibility of, I quickly played with like PS1 games, the possibility of using PS1 games on that with a stick, I think that's where I draw the line between the SP and the Flip. That flexibility of the sticks at the bottom, even though they're kind of weird, and maybe they should have used like 3DS sticks, like the more flat joysticks.
Yeah.
Still, I think with Miyoo for me right now is good enough, but I am very torn because I only want to have one small retro handheld in my life for Super Nintendo and up to PS1.
Right.
And I gotta make a decision. Is it gonna be the brick? Is it gonna be the flip? Right now, I think I am gravitating more and more toward the brick, but those sticks could sway me the other way, depending on what I want to start playing.
I'm curious what your thoughts are, both of you, about the difference between the screens between the flip and the brick. Because I have my flip. Brendan got me the link. They went back on sale, and my flip should be here maybe Tuesday or Wednesday next week. But I'm curious because the thing about the Trim UI brick is the screen is just so sharp and colorful that it's really... I didn't expect to be into the brick the way I have been, and it's really been. I just keep going back to it. It's a really great screen.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the brick screen wins, like kind of no question.
I mean, look at Chrono Trigger on this thing. Right? You know, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I just like, especially because for that review, I spent like a solid day before I actually sat down to film it, just kind of like messing between the flip and the Miyoo Mini Plus and the Trim UI brick, and every time I turned the brick on again, it was like, oh my god, this screen is so much better.
Yeah,
it's like it's really night and day. I think the like if you were to ask me what one device to buy right now, I think the brick is kind of it. I think specifically, speaking of custom firmware that's around the corner, CrossMix, which is like the best custom firmware for the Trim UI Smart and Smart Pro, is coming to the brick pretty soon.
Oh, nice.
Which basically is like in some ways the Onion OS or Spruce OS for Trim UI's stock operating system, where it just kind of like fixes everything and makes everything better and adds a little bit more functionality here and there. And as soon as that comes out, that's going to be, I think, a pretty huge deal for the brick. That's confirmed. Like that's the thing that's coming soon. So, I mean, the brick is just a great device.
Yeah.
The flip, though, I mean, I talked about this in the review. Like, the SP came with me everywhere. Like, it's all banged up. Like, I just really appreciate the ability to take a clamshell and just throw it in my pocket, even if my like keys are in there or whatever.
Right.
And I know some people won't feel that way. Some people are like, I want to protect it. I don't want any scuffs or scratches or whatever. For me, the point of having a clamshell is like it can just be anywhere I am, no problem.
Right.
And for that reason, I think the flip is always going to be more interesting to me. So I'm really hopeful that custom firmware developers end up like swooping in to save the day here. It's unfortunate that that's like the reality of it, but I do think that this device is going to be like rad in, again, a couple months.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about the bricks screen is that when you put on maximum brightness, I don't know if you can see that from the camera, it is absolutely wild.
Yeah, it's amazing.
How bright this thing can get. Like,
do you have MIUI on that also?
Yeah, I do have
MIUI is great.
Yeah, MIUI is amazing. And I discovered that it was actually created by Sean Inman, and Mac Stories and Sean go way back. Really,
is that true?
Way back.
Oh yeah, way back. Sean used to work on two products way back in the day, like more than 10 years ago. Fever, like a self-hosted RSS service that you could install on your own server, and also Mint Analytics, which is what Mac Stories used to use. Because we've always been kind of resistant to use Google Analytics, so we used to also self-host Mint, and then Sean created a game, if I'm not mistaken.
Couple of games on Kickstarter. There was a campaign probably, and I didn't know that they were the creator of MIUI. So that's it was a really nice discovery.
He also works on the Playdate at Panic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow.
See?
Shout out.
I did not realize that part of it. Yeah, no, I've Sean's done some great projects over the years, and the games, they're great retro pixel games. The Last Rocket Ship, I want to say, is one of them.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, okay. I need to take you guys on a bit of a journey.
I'm excited about this.
On one of my classic journeys that took about a month of research and like trial and error, and I think there's gonna be two surprising twists at the end. One of which is not in my notes, so that's gonna be fun. Over the holidays, I realized I was listening to a bunch of podcasts, and I realized there are some DS and 3DS games that I would like to revisit in my life. Specifically, I wanted to play again Super Mario 3D Land, which is possibly my favorite Nintendo 3DS game, and A Link Between Worlds. I feel like I rushed through A Link Between Worlds when it came out, and I finished the game, and I didn't like fully appreciated it, and I didn't 100% it, so I wanted to play it again. And I started thinking, well, okay, what's the best way today to emulate a DS, and more specifically a 3DS, because that's what I wanted to play. What's the best way to play that is not original hardware? And so I started thinking, and this is where my journey started. I remembered that down in storage, I had, from a few years ago, I never sold it, but I still had it, the original, well, not the original, the second model, the Microsoft Surface Duo 2.
Federico's storage is a little bit like the end of Indiana Jones when they roll the carts into the big warehouse. It's full of electronics, though.
Yes. Only the best stuff.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it, but only the best stuff ends up in storage, because it means I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it. So I realized, well, okay, so the Surface Duo, the second revision of the Surface Duo, is the ideal device for 3DS emulation. It's a foldable, and it's the kind of foldable that they don't make anymore. It's two screens, right? And you can flip it out like this. You can just use it as a phone on one display, or you can open it up, and it's two physical displays. And I thought, well, what better way to emulate a 3DS than to do what the console itself was doing, which is it's got two physical displays, one on top of the other. And sure enough, I set up Citra MMJ. So Citra is the 3DS emulator that was kind of made by the Yuzu team, and then somebody else took over, and now you can find two versions, one of them on the App Store, the other on GitHub. Long story short, you should get the one on GitHub because it's better. Long story short again, it's very nice. You can get a Surface Duo. It looks good. You can get a Surface Duo. Bottom screen is the bottom screen of the 3DS. Top screen, it's the top screen of the 3DS.
Sure.
And you can use touch controls. You can actually tap on the screen. You can use the virtual controls, or of course you can attach a controller to this thing. But even just holding the Duo, like it does feel like you're using a DS, right?
It's similar in size to maybe a 3DS XL, right?
It's similar in size. You can blow up the top screen to have increased resolution. You can run 3DS games at 3x with no issues. You can
really.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was curious about the power here. Yeah.
yeah. I'm running 3x now. Mario is going at 60 frames per second. I am loading custom textures on it. So even though it's not the latest and greatest Snapdragon, it's still powerful enough to run. The device does get kind of warm when you are emulating 3DS and upscaling 3DS.
Yeah. But I imagine if you're using an external controller, that's not as big of an issue.
It's not as big an issue, but if you're holding like right now, I can feel it. I can feel it here. So the form factor is nice, but there are plenty of downsides. First of all, this device has been discontinued. Microsoft doesn't make the Surface Duo anymore. Actually, in the whole like tech market as a whole, they don't make these kinds of foldables anymore. Now,
Nobody does.
So sad.
Nobody does. Nobody's making a 2-screen with a hinge in the middle. Like nobody's making a foldable like this anymore. All foldables are like the Z Fold and the Google Pixel Fold. Like it's a screen on the outside, and then you open it up and it's a small tablet. So nobody's making this anymore, which means this thing is running a really old version of Android. I believe it's stuck on Android 12 or 13, and we are now up to Android 15 or 16 this year, which is not a huge issue per se. A lot of these handhelds, they are running Android 13, but the fact that it's discontinued, stuck on, like, I'm not even sure that Microsoft is issuing security updates anymore for this thing. So it's like, do you really want to use it with all your passwords and things on Android? Probably not. It does not have a micro SD slot. So all the storage that you get is the storage that's inside the phone. And that's the other part. You could find this on the used market, but would you really, like, ultimately this is a phone and it commands the sort of pricing that a phone requires. Would you really get a whole phone just to emulate DS and 3DS?
An expensive and now increasingly rare phone.
An expensive and rare and discontinued phone.
Obsolete, yes.
So let me interject right here, because right before we started recording, I told you I was mad at you about this.
Uh-huh.
I have 3 tech devices that I've always wanted and have never purchased for myself. And I, like Infinity Stones, I've been collecting them one at a time. The first one I've already shown, which is the DSi, the matte black Nintendo DSi. The second one I've also shown already. It's the PSP Go.
Yes.
And the third one is the Microsoft Surface Duo 2.
This one.
That product in particular is one that I have found fascinating and have always wanted. And I think even on the phone end, when it was released as a phone, I was like, this is the closest I will probably ever get to switching off of iOS. Because the idea of not having a screen on the outside, I think, is like fantastic.
Yes.
And I've talked about this a lot elsewhere, but there's something specific about deciding to make a phone with no screen on the outside that I feel like curbs screen time much better than any screen time app ever could. The irony of Microsoft's marketing for the Surface Duo has always been that they're like, it has 2 screens, so now you can be more productive. I'm like, no. I want to be less productive, and that's why I want your phone.
Let me tell you how much I love this weird and discontinued device. Like the fact that you flip it open, it's almost like a book. It's the perfect Kindle device. I've been using Readwise Reader on this thing, and just you use it like a book, and then you want to open some links in an article. You keep a browser on the other side. It's like a physical split view because you actually have 2 physical screens. I love it, but they don't make it anymore. So I cannot recommend this thing. So moving on.
Sad.
So I was like, okay, this is impressive.
There goes my dream. Okay, what's next?
This is impressive. Obviously.
Killing poor Brendan's dreams right here live on the show.
I am sorry, Brendan. But moving on, I thought, well, let's go with the obvious route. Let's go with the good old trusted Steam Deck, right?
Yeah, but
so what can I say? I mean, you can install Citra on a Steam Deck. It's going to run everything. You're going to install it in desktop mode, in the Linux environment. You're going to put all your... I am running Dropbox in desktop mode so that I can actually directly sync all of my games. You can load custom textures. You can upscale 2x, 3x, kind of like the Surface Duo, no problem. But the issue is, with the Steam Deck, you have a horizontal form factor. And that gets kind of weird when you want to play 2-screen games on a DS or 3DS, because you're going to end up with you're going to have to make the top screen bigger on one side of the Steam Deck and you're going to have to make the secondary screen a little bit smaller in a corner. That is, unless you want to play with one screen at a time and you want to have a hotkey to quickly preview what's going on the second screen. But I wanted to properly replicate the 3DS experience. I didn't want to have two games on one screen at a time. I wanted to have two screens. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could add a second display to the Steam Deck? Now, I don't have it right here, but this was my idea. There's going to be a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
There's this very portable 7-inch display. It kind of looks like a phone. It's actually an external display. It's called the Wise Coco 7-inch 1080p external display.
Okay.
It looks like a phone.
Yeah.
But it's like 7 inches, and it's powered via USB-C. This is an external display that is about this big that you can power via USB-C.
And it connects with your brackets. You probably
hold on. I have the mechanism, like the deck link mounting, that, for example, right now I am using to attach a kickstand to the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
I thought I am gonna get the phone mount that Mechanism makes. Mechanism, the makers of the gaming pillow, as we know.
Who can forget?
I am gonna get the phone mount, which is a bracket that you can sort of attach here, and it's got like a suction cup almost. Like
people use it for like chat apps and stuff.
Yeah,
a lot.
I'm gonna attach this bracket here, and I'm gonna mount the display either here at the top or at the bottom of the Steam Deck. So I'm gonna play with the Steam Deck that has a display floating above it or below it.
Okay.
That was my idea. And it works, but only in desktop mode. Because unfortunately, so Citra on the Steam Deck, it's got a setting to say separate the two screens out to the external displays. So you can keep one virtual 3DS screen on one display and another 3DS screen on an external monitor. And that's perfect because you can keep, say, the top screen on the Steam Deck and the bottom screen on the attached external monitor. It works, but it doesn't work in gaming mode because the Steam Deck and SteamOS are still limited by the fact that if you are in gaming mode and you attach an external display, the internal screen of the Steam Deck shuts off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one of the, has always been the case with SteamOS in gaming mode. It doesn't support like concurrent displays. One of them, if the Steam Deck is in gaming mode and it detects that you have an external display attached, the internal screen just is like, bye-bye, I cannot be used right now.
How were the ergonomics of that? I mean, I got to think
it was good. It was good.
Really?
Like, it was good because the display is lightweight enough.
Okay.
The Steam Deck,
imagine it's really just the Steam Deck, right?
It's the Steam Deck. It's just the Steam Deck. It's balancing everything, so you're really putting the pressure here, like where you're gripping the console, so you're not really feeling it. And setting it up was like the arguably I think the easiest experience. You get EmuDeck going on the Steam Deck, and then you can use Emulation Station. And if you're putting all your games on an external SD card, for example, like it's so easy. You're getting all your games together. EmuDeck is taking care of the updates, and Emulation Station is giving you a front end. So it was very nice, but I needed to have two screens at the same time, and I was not satisfied with the Steam Deck either. So I kept thinking, and the journey continues. I realized, well, let's think about this more deeply. The DS and the 3DS were vertically oriented consoles, right? You have one display stacked on top of the other one.
Right.
Exactly. So shout out to the DSi, one of the greatest of all time. It's a vertically oriented console. What is a vertically oriented console? What is a vertically oriented device these days? Well, that's a tablet, right? A tablet, you can rotate it. It can be a horizontal, but it can also be in portrait. And this is where I realized maybe the best handheld for emulating with great performance a 3DS is an Android tablet. So this is where I am right now. My favorite device to emulate 3DS. Where I'm actually playing a lot of... I'm almost done with Super Mario 3D Land.
Oh,
My
nice.
favorite device is the Legion Tab 1 Y700. Here it is. This is my Citrus setup. And I don't know, let's see, A Link Between Worlds. This is what I would recommend. So the Y700 that I think I mentioned in the previous episode is going to be known as the Legion Tab in other markets. This is an incredibly powerful Android tablet that has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 inside, and it allows me to run 3DS games at 4x the resolution with 4K textures, and it simply doesn't care. It doesn't get warm. It doesn't drop a single frame. It's absolutely perfect.
Man.
And what I love about this is that, see, this is Zelda with two screens. So you are stacking two virtual screens on top of the other. I am using, so I could choose. I could just use the tablet itself in touch mode, and I could put some virtual controls down here. Or I'm using the GamSir G8 Plus. This is a telescopic Bluetooth controller that allows me to quickly put the tablet in the middle, and I can emulate as many games as I want with 4 times the resolution, 4K textures, and the Snapdragon inside. I don't even have to set it to performance mode. I can stay in balance mode. The battery lasts forever, and it's wild. What I also love about this is that you have multiple USB-C ports. So when I'm using this device, I can choose to have I have a USB-C port at the bottom, and I have one on the side. So
I forgot that I had one on the side. It's wild.
If I want to use USB-C earbuds, I can do that. If I want to charge it when I play it, I can do that. I am just loving the kind of performance and the kind of image quality that I get by upscaling this to basically 1440p. This is what I'm playing Nintendo 3DS games at 1440p, which
That's
is
crazy.
wild. And I'm loading A Link Between Worlds in 1440p, 60 frames with 4K textures is a thing. Like you have to see it in person to see how good it looks. I would also say that this device, and maybe we'll talk about this in a future episode, when I turn it horizontal and playing Dolphin and Twilight Princess in 4K with 4K textures, with basically zero performance loss. And actually, this chip is so fast that in some parts of Twilight Princess, the emulation speed is actually it says 400%, which means
ahead of itself.
I could, yes. I mean, obviously I'm playing at 100%, but I could emulate this 4 times over, and the Snapdragon still wouldn't care. So it's wild what Android tablets can do, especially the latest generation with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. I don't even want to imagine what's going to happen when we eventually get Snapdragon 8 Elite or whatever they're going to be called. Like the performance of these things in such a small form factor is wild. But there's
Can I just say real quick?
Yeah.
I just a quick cursory search at the price of this thing. You can find it literally right now for under $300.
Yeah.
The idea of getting that performance for under $300 on a tablet like that is
that chipset is kind of the end game for emulation almost.
Unreal.
I think, you know?
Yeah. I posted some pictures on Blue Sky of Twilight Princess in 4K with 4K textures. It's wild. Like,
oh my God.
It looks incredible. It looks like you're playing on a PC. You're playing on an Android tablet. And the same is true for 3DS. Like, looking at a link between... Like, it doesn't even look like a link between worlds, but it is a link between worlds. Now, there is a fascinating tangent and a final surprise that I kept for the show. There's movement lately in iOS and iPadOS land, and specifically iPadOS with this, I have the M4 iPad Pro here. So very famously, Apple is disallowing video game emulators from using just-in-time compilation, which is
Right.
called JIT. And it's a technique that allows, basically, without getting too technical, the chipset inside the computer to compile the code necessary for the emulator to run at runtime, meaning that nothing is cached. Technically, it can be a security risk because you don't have that cache process in the middle. That is possible on Android. That is why you get such incredible performance out of Citra or Dolphin. It's not allowed on iOS or iPadOS. But I've been noticing over the past few weeks, and I've done some research, that some people realized, well, okay, so Apple does not allow JIT on the iPad. But what if we used the incredible power of the M4, which should have plenty of overhead, like plenty of performance headroom to just, like, what if we emulated the whole thing cached and we threw basically the power of the M4 at the problem?
Brute force the whole thing, right?
Brute force the whole thing. Would it work?
This is my favorite solution every time. I love this. Yes.
Like, how much horsepower can you throw at an emulator that has a just-in-time compiler and say, well, ignore the just-in-time compiler, just brute force the whole thing with a cached system? And I'm here to tell you that it kind of works. Kind of. So,
Great.
there are two. Obviously, I was researching DS and 3DS. I tested Folium. So Folium is a 3DS emulator that is based, I strongly believe it's based on the Citra core. They call the core Citrus in the Folium settings. But when you set up the Citrus core, it's literally the same file structure as Citra on Android. So I think it is based on Citra. It works. It's a bit fiddly. Folium is not the greatest iOS and iPadOS app ever made. But I can use the M4 iPad Pro in portrait. So same setup as the Legion tab. Put it in portrait, stack one screen on top of the other. Folium is kind of weird if you want to make a custom layout, not as intuitive as Citra. But 3DS, it's unreliable. You got plenty of frame drops. It gets worse if you load custom textures, but the theory of it works for 3DS. Without JIT, you can have, especially if you don't upscale and you don't use custom textures and you're not trying to play one of those like difficult to emulate games, like I'm pretty sure the Kid Icarus weren't playing on that thing, but the power of the M4 gets you by with 3DS emulation. And that is without any enhancements, without any hacks, without custom textures.
Right. Just straight up running it, right?
Straight up just brute forcing the thing and say, okay, uncached, no JIT, do it. It kind of does it.
That's interesting because I would think that maybe one generation M series chip from now and some optimizations that are geared specifically to iOS, we could really see this take off.
So I was going to get to that. So it gets much worse if you try. So obviously I tested 3DS on the iPad and I was like, well, okay, sure, I could do it. But honestly, I'm getting such a much better experience on the Legion tab. Playing with that graphical quality, with that performance, like, why would I give it up? So I'm glad I did it because on paper, you can do it. And I would say if you have an M4 iPad Pro, especially like, and what's funny is that only the high-end versions of the M4 that have like, two extra CPU cores, because the GPU is not involved here, right? Emulators, it's all falling on the CPU. So it's not just like even say, the M4. No, the high-end version of the M4 can probably do it. But for 3DS, I was like, I just prefer doing it on the Legion tab. So conclusion of the main topic, the perfect 3DS device for me right now, the Legion tab. That's
and the iPad Pro is a much more expensive device. You wouldn't want to go out and spend the one you're talking about is that you're spending over $1,000 to play 3DS games when the Legion tab is hundreds.
But going forward, quick parenthesis, this no JIT approach, the Dolphin emulator, there's a fork of it called Dolphin iOS that is sort of based on the main code of Dolphin for Android and desktop, but it's made by a smaller team. They recently, apparently, also heard of this idea of like, well, the M4 can probably emulate games without JIT. So they put out a beta that specifically has a setting called no JIT. And they advertise heavily that you shouldn't do it because you're going to run into performance issues. But some users with the high-end version of the M4 can probably play around with it. I installed the Dolphin iOS using AltStore Classic, so the classic method that involves a computer. And it was very unreliable, but you can see a small faint light at the end of a very long tunnel, basically. You can see. So first of all, I saw a person on Reddit. This person keeps posting these videos of a very stable Dolphin iOS no JIT setup on an M4 iPad Pro that I just cannot replicate myself. I don't know how this person is getting Tony Hawk, Zelda Twilight Princess, Metroid Prime to run as reliably as they do in those videos. If you're watching this or listening to this, please let me know, because I think I copied your settings, but I must have done something wrong because I'm not getting that performance out of it. And I think I have the same iPad Pro. It was very unreliable. Zelda Twilight Princess would, for example, when you get to Ordon Village, like the first village, the Link hometown, it drops to 15 to 16 frames consistently. Brutal. Other areas you can play at 30, and it does a decent job at keeping up at 30. Wind Waker, you cannot go above 15 FPS.
Oh boy.
Paper Mario, you can play at 25, 26-ish FPS. It's impressive because you're not using JIT. Every call to the emulator is cached in the CPU. I think this is an area where if Apple doesn't change its mind, it's very possible that in June, Apple is going to come up and say, everybody, we now offer a native JIT entitlement. If you have an emulator and you want to use JIT, there's going to be this procedure, blah, 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 you can use JIT. If they do that, great, which means we're going to have Dolphin, we're going to have 3DS with full performance. If they don't, I would keep an eye on what's going to happen with the M5 iPad Pro, either later this year or maybe next year. Because what I have noticed is that on Dolphin, which is arguably the most difficult emulator to set up, you can consistently see the M4 with no JIT top out at 60% performance. If we can get to 80 to 90% and have basically a stable 30 FPS with the occasional drop below 30, I think that becomes a lot more interesting to say, well, you can use Dolphin on an iPad, you're going to get the occasional drop, but now 60% performance is not good enough.
Is it? Does your iPad get hot, Federico? I assume it does.
It does get warm. It does get warm because you're basically running. You're getting 60% the performance of a GameCube.
And but that's the CPU is going all out,
and that's by running the CPU all out at 100%.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Right. So
that feels like a pretty easy way to kill your iPad. Much faster than through normal use.
Oh yeah.
100%,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, to sum up this segment and this journey, I'm using the Y700, and I really cannot recommend this device enough for streaming, for 3DS, for DS, for Dolphin. It's incredible.
You're gonna make me spend money. I can feel it coming.
I would honestly recommend. I'm using the Chinese version, which I think you can get for cheaper. It requires a bit more setup up front.
Yeah.
Because you gotta delete all of the Chinese stuff, and but it's doable. But as a final treat for myself, I thought, well, I'm in my 3DS era, and I kind of want to play around with a flavor of the 3DS that I never had. I never got it, and I got it a few days ago. I haven't used it, but I just wanted to say that, boy, is this thing weird.
Oh, I have one of those.
Dude. Oh,
this
man.
is so weird. Like, this is, what's the 2DS? The
2DS.
This whole episode is about toast.
The
Yes.
Nintendo 2DS. This I never had it. I never had the 2DS,
Yeah.
and I thought I kind of want to check it out.
I got one of those for one of my kids at one point, and I still have it. I
This
don't
is
use it
the-
much.
Supposedly, this is the indestructible, kid-friendly flavor
Yes.
of the
Yes.
3DS, which doesn't have 3D and has two screens on top of each other. Weird stick here, weird
Yeah.
form factor. It's weird.
I
Surprisingly
think it's one
comfortable.
screen separated by a piece of
It is.
plastic.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's my big theory about like I think that the two next frontiers for retro emulation handhelds are going to be making something that's as close to the PSP as possible. If I were to call my shot, I'd say we'll see something like that this year. My other called shot, I think, is that the first developer or the first manufacturer to try and make like a Nintendo DS handheld will do it exactly that way. It'll just be a 16:9 screen with a piece of plastic in between it, and they'll find some kind of software hack to have the two screens. I think the Nintendo 2DS is like one of the most incredible things Nintendo's ever made. It is extremely comfortable to hold, which is weird, as you said. It just looks
so weird.
It looks like unbelievably stupid.
It
but
does.
it's a
It really
brilliant
does.
device.
It
It's
really
a brilliant
does.
device.
It really does. So I got it new, sealed in box.
Really?
Oh, nice.
For less than €100
How?
on eBay. It was left in a warehouse from an old video game store. The
Yeah?
guy said on the
That
auction.
rocks.
It's incredible. Like it was brand new. I think I'm gonna mod this like I
Yeah,
did
you
for
should.
my 3DS and just put my entire library on an SD card or something. And
Yeah,
just
that's great.
because some games you do want to have you do want to have a stylus, you do want to play with the original hardware. But that being said, I'm almost done with Super Mario 3D Land on the Legion tab. I played a good chunk of A Link Between Worlds. What an incredible game still. And
It's an all-timer. Yeah.
it's an all-timer. And next for me is finally, I think, starting Dragon Quest 8, which I
Oh,
never
nice.
played. Never played Dragon Quest 8 before. I think I'm going with the 3DS version, upscaled with better textures. And I saw there's a mod to bring the orchestrated soundtrack from the PS2 on the 3DS.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely nailed it. That's exactly what you should be doing.
So
Yes.
that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So-
Great.
Awesome.
I have so many thoughts about this. We've run so long. I'll sum them all up in a very, very concise package, which is I think if Apple ever enables JIT for iOS and iPad OS, I think that the iPad Pro that I
Mhm.
have right now will be like my go-to
Yeah.
GameCube device.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like GameCube on that screen in particular, even with
yeah.
like the aspect ratio of the iPad and everything. Like I bought
Oh, isn't
controller.
it? Wouldn't it be like a native match for
I
4x3?
think almost, yeah. If-
Very
yeah,
close. Yeah.
If
Very
it's
close.
not exact, then it's really close. I bought an 8-bit controller specifically for my iPad as soon as they released emulators into the App Store, and I'm just like dying to play GameCube on that thing. So hopefully one day, Yeah, I'm excited
know.
for you with the 3DS though.
I want to see like with this no JIT approach. Is it possible that Dolphin for iOS will manage somehow to squeeze even more performance out of the M4? Is it possible that there's a way to maximize the performance of the M4 by doing something else that I haven't done? Like for example, on the Legion tab, very clearly there's an overlay that you can invoke, and Lenovo lets you say, well, how do you want to run the CPU? Do you want to be in silent mode, balance mode, or just going all out performance mode? You cannot do the same on iPad OS. You can go into low power mode,
Yeah.
but and that's, I should have mentioned, this performance, the 60% emulation speed, that's with Dolphin for iOS taking advantage of the new feature that I think is new this year, John, game mode.
Right.
That's that they are using game mode. So they're saying, I'm a video game, I need as many resources as possible. And still, without JIT, it can now go past 60%.
Federico, you should try your cooling puck. Don't you have one of those cooling pucks for games on
Ooh,
the tablet?
okay,
might
that is
help.
that is the one thing I have not tested.
That's one thing you could probably do, because the iPad obviously doesn't have a fan, and that might actually cool your CPU enough that you won't get throttled on some of those more taxing scenes.
Interesting. Or maybe I should just get an ice pack and put it put it behind the iPad.
Just put it in the cooler on a bed of ice.
Just stand in front of your freezer.
What are you doing? You're checking. Are you checking if you have frozen peas? No, I'm playing Twilight Princess. That's what I'm doing.
Yes, iPad on a bag of frozen peas. That's the solution.
Yeah, you could be warming up dinner and cooling your iPad at the same time.
Productivity. That's what they call productivity, right? Multitasking.
Yeah. Oh, do I need 2 screens on my phone? No, I just need peas, a rubber band, and my iPad.
There you go.
Oh boy.
No, that's a good way to end the show.
We somehow managed to talk about all the things we wanted to talk about in this episode.
It's a lot.
This is the first time we haven't skipped many items in our rundown.
We did it.
We have so much more. We should be talking more about the Trim UI brick.
We are the equivalent of the M4. Even though we didn't skip anything, we still have so much that
we're overclocked today, guys.
Yeah.
Overclocked. Yeah. Just saying. All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening to NPC Next Portable Console. If you haven't watched us on video yet, go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. It's a great way to see the show because you can see some of the devices we talked about that we held up, and Brendan does funny things with his hands during the show.
Brendan has a bunch of PSPs. That's the thing. Brendan has 2 things on his desk.
He does.
Flip devices and a weird large collection of PSPs.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
There's more. I don't have enough hands for everything.
I've only got two handheld consoles and 2 controllers on my desk today, so that's I'm not holding up my end of the bargain.
I have not cleaned up from my Miyoo Flip review. Is
really what it comes down to.
The problem here. Yeah.
No, I get it. Well, you can find Brendan over at wavelengths.online. He also is on Into the Aether, another podcast, which is a fantastic one you should check out. Federico and I, we are at macstories.net and Club Mac Stories, and we have a bunch of other podcasts, including App Stories and Mac Stories Unwind, and the 3 of us are often seen on social media. It's easy to find us. Just search for our names. You'll find us. It's not that hard. All right, guys. Until next time, talk to you later.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.